Welcome to the IB Exhibition 2023. I'm going to show you around a few of the students' works. So we're going to start off with Thea. Her work is all based around the human condition, and it shows like different stages of emotions and also people's lives. So if you have a look, this one is bonds and represents kind of the bonds that tie us together. The pieces here are made with recycled sort of materials. She went to like a junk shop in New York to find her images while she was on summer break, and she wanted to give new meaning to the images because what she felt when she was looking at all these things that had ended up in a junk shop, that these were really personal images and she wanted to give kind of new life to them. So the images and the text she's kind of merged together, and these pieces represent how things over time lose value, lose meaning. And this piece here, she's created to show sort of like how we have like really strong connections between our family, and then maybe loss or perhaps something happens in life that then kind of changes that situation. So these are kind of locked up memories. She's then got pieces on her own culture and also a lot of figurative work that relate to the body and how we view ourselves, and also different situations that can happen in life. This piece represents how the body is changed after different experiences as well. So this piece relates to eating disorders and how the body is then changed after that experience. And that's the end of Thea's work here. Going on to Lakshana's work. Her work is all about, very much based on Indian culture and relates to kind of gods and goddesses. So you can see that she started off with like an image here of like prayer, and then moving on to images that she took of her mother dressed as kind of one of the goddesses. She's explored similar themes through this was made with a mezzotint, and we had an artist in residence come to work with our students to make this print. And he showed us basically how we are supposed to sort of like mark our plate, run it through the press, and over like 2 days the students produced this piece and also another piece over here, so I'll show you that in a minute. This piece was also made by a different artist in residence. This one was Kumpoi, and he works at the Love Art Studio in Rawai, and this artist is based in Phuket town, and his name is Monthian, and he's a woodcut artist. So she made this piece alongside him, again based on one of the gods. This piece started off as an acrylic painting, but after going on the Bangkok art trip, the students saw lots of work that incorporated different media, one of those kind of being diamonds and embellishments, and decided that that would be a really good way to bring her piece forwards, so decided to then add that as well. This piece is made as an etching, so it's one plate, the etching that's created, and uses kind of like a very sharp scratching tool on a surface, and then run through a press, and it creates like one print, but then what we have done, she's inked it up multiple times and printed it in different colors as well. This piece was made alongside the same artist that we brought in to be an artist in residence, Kumpoi, who I said made the mezzotint. So he also worked with our students to explore lino cut and using kind of different inks to create sort of an ombre effect, and then different carving techniques to create different mark making. This piece is similar to the piece that you saw before. Again, made in the same way, started off as an acrylic painting, and then after seeing work on the Bangkok art trip in the Queen's Gallery in Bangkok, decided to then add more to this piece and embellish it further. This piece has a second kind of outcome that goes with it, which is a sari, a fabric kind of like piece that you can see the subject wearing in this. This piece is kind of a bit more negative, the negative sides about her culture, Indian culture, and looks at kind of child marriages and arranged marriage, and uses like the newspaper clippings to then attach to the sari. And in this scene you can see sort of like that playing out. So that's the end of Lakshana's work. We're going to move on to Alicia's work. Alicia's work deals with different themes, again quite sort of controversial themes within Thailand. So you can see first of all like the Buddha here being used for negative sort of reasons. So in Thailand we don't allow people to have kind of Buddha tattoos and use Buddha in kind of like a commercial way. So you can see this is sort of like the negative side, whereas this is more of the positive side and how we should respect Buddha. Her work also looks at the sex industry in Thailand and how the people of that industry almost become objects, more objects than people. So you can see that this is why this sculpture doesn't really have any recognizable features or faces, and then the piece is called Anonymous. Again, linking to this piece, the themes are very similar, how we kind of buy and sell people and the negative things that happen, and you can see that that is also part of the collage in her piece as well. This piece is a photography and Photoshop piece, and she's used herself as a subject. And you can see, like, if you look closely at the words, you can sort of see the things that her work explores. Looks at like Thailand's nightlife, sex workers, clubs, bars, and then also some of the things that Thailand want to be seen to be doing, like good behavior, meditation, peace, Buddhism, and how those things are kind of opposites to each other. And one last piece here. This is about kind of how in Thailand women are sometimes oppressed, and you can see that there are different eyes that relate to sort of different viewpoints. Okay, and that's the end of Alicia's work, and moving on to Kate's work. Move that out of the way. So you can see in Kate's work, her work explores different themes of anxiety, isolation, and also war. Kate is a Russian student, so partway through the course, obviously, the war in Russia started to influence her thoughts, and you can see this played out in her artwork. So starting off in the course, again, this student worked alongside the Artist in Residence program with Monthian, the woodcut artist in Phuket town. And you can see her work here with different mark making, and we used a printing press. Actually, this piece is made printed by hand. You can see that in the way that the marks are made in the background. This piece is an etching. She made this alongside the teacher that was here when they were making etchings last year, and that was Miss Hildreth. Miss Hildreth is a very experienced printmaker, and her own method of art is etching. So you can see that the students really learn a lot from her teaching, and has produced like a really detailed etching with a lot of good plate tone. In this piece, this is a lino cut piece, and this was made alongside the Artist in Residence Kompoi, and again based on war and the different sort of like things that are happening within that. And then here, this piece was made as kind of a personal piece, and is made in a sort of graffiti style with bright colours on a very large scale. She's also done some digital art here. This is digital painting, and this is an animation. So if you watch this kind of from the beginning, the title is I Am Fine, okay? And I think it's often sort of, you know, we always say that we're okay, we're fine, but perhaps sometimes we're not. And so you can see this black cloud following her around. This piece was made as a watercolor, and then she's fragmented it. And this piece is also made as a watercolor and again broken up into different sections. This piece is a mezzotint. The title is Alone, and you can see sort of like these kind of tears are accentuated from her eyes. Similar to the piece that she made in the graffiti style, those kind of themes have run throughout her work. And this piece, like I said, was kind of based on war and how her parents were maybe implicated in like sort of that, and their doctors, and that she felt that it was very difficult to then help everyone. So this is what this kind of illustrates here. Okay, and that's the end of Kate's work. So moving on to Yuta's work. Yuta's work, a lot of it is also based on war. Obviously this is something that's very current for the students, and they have they have big opinions about it and channel it through their work. So you can see this piece, not necessarily about war, but about himself feeling kind of like on the edge. I think it's really sort of a powerful message about how students, you know, feel a lot of pressure at this time in their lives. There's a lot of change happening and a lot of things that they need to learn in order to pass their exams. The pieces here are mostly all based on conflict. So you can see this is a lino cut, this is a wood cut, this is an etching, and this is also a lino cut. The lino cut and etchings were made alongside artists in residences, and the etchings and also this lino cut were made with our teaching here. And so moving on to, I think the next student is Arm. Okay, so this is Arm's work. His work all revolves around Thai culture and imagery. So you can see this image here is based on folklore within Thai literature. The pieces here are based on kind of carvings, Thai carvings, and also Thai temples. And within sort of Thailand, they often have kind of like a mix of cultures from when different people settled in the country. So you see often influences of Sino-Portuguese and Chinese influences. So this is one of the dragons that were seen on one of the temples that he photographed, and it's built up in a relief way. And this is, again, like a Thai temple. And this is made alongside an artist that lives on the island, Miss Colson. And she works in this kind of wax and mixed media way. And this piece is about all the construction that he was seeing on the way home. So his work is often influenced by architecture. You can see some kind of like traditional architecture and also new things that are happening in Thailand and the changes that are happening. This piece, you can see, is also a very kind of famous character in Thailand, against like a temple as well, made with the artist Kumpoi, and using his kind of lino cut techniques. These pieces here are made by our artists, our student artists who are interns in the school. So Evie is from the UK and her degree is in graphic design, so a lot of her work is digital. And these pieces are made by Isabel, and she works in kind of a more fine art style, very similar to Basque, with a lot of graffiti and mixed media. Coming to our next student artist, this is Prai, and her work is kind of mainly based on sort of distortion. Some of it being how we felt during like COVID. You can see this is very poignant about that time and how lots of people felt kind of stigmatized by having COVID. And these students were very much affected by COVID because in the first year of their course, there was still lots of lockdowns, and they had like limited access to school and materials. So it was still a time of where COVID was a real big part of their lives. You can see here, a lot of her pieces are about kind of like body dysmorphia and how we see ourselves, how other people see us. So this is a painting, an oil painting, and she's managed to really capture a very good likeness of herself and also warp that as well by hand. This one's painted again in oil, again a very good likeness of her. This piece is worked with Kompoi. This is actually not the mezzotint itself, but it's the mezzotint plate. So which she's worked into and burnished. It's like a copper plate. This piece is a lino cut. This piece is an etching and a colour pencil study. So she's combined the two media here. And this piece is like a photoshopped image that she's taken of herself. And that's now moving on to Anita's work on the other side of the wall here. I'll start around the corner. And also Anita has a couple of animations, so hopefully you'll see some footage of those as well. So you can see her big piece here. She wanted to kind of like explore human versus nature, and how nature is in some ways fighting back as well. So with sort of construction and things that are happening around Thailand, she wanted to show that there are some elements where plants are still kind of regrowing through buildings, around buildings, and this is based on that. Her work also follows very similar themes, some positive, some negative. So you can see like here, overgrown. It's quite difficult to see because it's quite a dark mezzotint print, but it's of a dilapidated building and how eventually different plants start to overgrow, especially in Thailand where there's so much kind of greenery. Even when something's left unattended for like a year, you'll find that it's totally overgrown with new vines, new life. So that work is based on that. This is based on kind of how we are sort of like the crop burning in sort of like Chiang Mai, how we sort of then again destroy nature. So it's a constant kind of evaluation of how nature is fighting back and how we are then also negatively impacting nature. So this is kind of then how, painted in a Chuck Close style, how it's almost like obliterating. And then crushed is made in a lino, this is a woodcut technique, and it's been hand printed. Again, you can see these little lines. This is where something has been rolled over and over again on the back of the wood to then make the print. This piece is part of the installation with an animation, so hopefully you'll see that as part of this footage. Then moving on to a new student, this is Vihana. Vihana's work is all based around kind of distortion and mostly portraits of herself. So you can see this one called Worn Out was painted very recently towards the end of her course, because she's a she's a high performance tennis player. So often she'll spend long periods away, and then when she comes back it's very intense for her to like catch up with things. So this piece is based on that. This is an acrylic painting and also oil, so she's kind of mixed two medias here. This piece is an etching, and she's etched it in different sections and then assembled it together. This piece is also an etching, but in a similar style to one of her artists. She's then crumpled her piece and then assembled it in this way. This piece is a photo collage using her own images and digitally put together. This piece is an acrylic painting, again another self-portrait, and kind of like sliced up and reassembled together. This piece is an etching and then developed with watercolor. And this piece is a digital drawing made on Procreate. Okay, and that's the end of Vihana's work, and lastly we've got Emmy's work. Emmy is standard level, so she has like slightly less work here, but actually quite a few of her pieces are sculptures, so you'll see them later on after this. So this is one of her larger paintings. Her work is very much based on, like I said, with the sculptures, a battle between her heart and head. So before coming to this school, she was living in Germany, and she had to make a difficult decision to kind of leave her friends and some of her family there. And so this is sort of in her art, it plays out that situation. This piece is also inspired by Banksy. She went to see the Banksy exhibition in Bangkok as part of our school art trip. And so this is her own self-portrait, but also kind of incorporating Banksy's style. This is a mezzotint, again about being lonely in a new place. And this is the decision-making playing out like a battle between the heart and head and pulling apart. And now I'm going to lead you to a few of the sculptures that the students have made. As you can see by looking around, they're all different. The students have very unique ideas, and they've got a lot of different techniques and media within their work. So you can see here, these pieces are all made in ceramics, and a lot of this student's pieces, Prai, they have tried to sort of show what it was like during COVID and in isolation, how sort of like it made a lot of people feel lethargic and isolated, and they've also kind of then derived some of their work from that as well. In these pieces, the student wanted to show different stereotypes, so they've got a male and a female sculpture. These pieces have been made on the pottery wheel, but then they've also then developed their pieces using hand-build techniques to build the faces and use different glazes. They're kind of supposed to represent male and female, so you can see like the male is obviously kind of in that masculine shape and female is in this shape, the alternative as well. These two pieces are based on Thai culture. This is made on the pottery wheel, and then they've used some like hand-build techniques to carve out the design, and also used like gold leaf and gold glaze to then repair some of the pieces. That this piece is a repaired piece, but also as part of the design as well. This piece, you can often see these kind of patterns and shapes in Thai architecture, and they were very much inspired by like the temples of Thailand and their design as well. This piece was kind of an experimental piece. He wanted to create a sculpture that was interactive and that could be balanced. It was based on wishing stones, so like in different cultures, in Thailand and Korea, they have stones where people place them on top of each other to build stacks, relaying a kind of wish after each one. So these ones have been sort of placed on top of each other, right to the very kind of like smallest stone, and use gold leaf, which is often used in Thai culture. Again, made by the same student that made these two arms, and then created like his sculpture in this way. These three pieces are made by the student Yuta. He was very interested in kind of war, and both sort of historical war and present wars that are happening now. His pieces are very thought-provoking. He's created like both of these. This piece is a grenade made on the pottery wheel, and then with some hand-built elements as well. This is hand-built, and you can see they've used different glazes to kind of illustrate their ideas. These parts, this one's made by Lakshana, and this one is made by Emmy. This student's made the pot on the pottery wheel and then added sort of like different embellishments. Her work is very cultural. She's from India, so you can see that in her work here. This student, the concept for this pottery piece, the teapot, is to pour your heart out. So when perhaps like things happen in life, bad things happen, we often meet together over kind of like a cup of tea and talk about the situation. So you can see the heart there is graffitoed onto the pot. This piece was ironed on, and it was lots of different newspaper articles that related to negative things that are happening in their culture. And they'd ironed on the newspapers from like cuttings they'd taken, and then placed it on a sari that then they'd then positioned together. This piece is made by, first of all, casting the student directly from their own body, and then they've used alginate to cast their hands and plaster to then put it all together as well. So you can see here it's kind of like a hole in the heart. So kind of like this piece is about when you feel heartbreak, and it almost feels like this is a physical thing. Over here, this piece of pottery, again, is made on the pottery wheel, and then also this is handmade. It represents a black dahlia, which is beautiful kind of to look at, but also kind of represents like a kind of deadly evil side as well. So I think this piece was about how people on the outside can seem very pleasant, and then sometimes a little bit unpleasant inside. These pieces were all made on the pottery wheel, and they've been distressed in different ways to kind of show her pieces were kind of like how people are broken. So these were all perfect to start off with, but she purposefully damaged each of them in different ways. This piece is about sort of how we view our own bodies and how maybe what the ideal body type is. So some of her other sculptures and pieces are based on kind of herself and how she would like to be. So the text relates to that. And this is glaze with lots of different glazes in sections. This piece is kind of culturally related to the same student that has a lot of work based on Indian culture. She's created these little figures because the pots are often used in sort of blessings and rituals in the culture. And this is made by the same student who created the teapot of pouring your heart out. Her work is a lot about, has a lot of themes about sort of like heartache and decision making. So this piece was a fight between the head and the heart. So this piece has come together in this way, and it's made with lots of different materials, mostly paper, fabric, and also this is made by kind of expanding foam and carving. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen and to look at the students' work. The students have worked so hard and done a fantastic job over the last 2 years.